Welcome back to the Doc of Detox show, everyone. And today's show is Life Crystals, Divine Intelligence. Now, understand something. When I was first introduced to life crystals and I heard about Dr. George Merkle, I actually couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we could have something with such high energy, because what I discovered is I discovered that life crystals have the highest energy of any particle on planet Earth, for as far as I know. Now, I don't know everything, but I will tell you that ever since that we brought life crystals and we've been putting it into our products, we have seen major changes in our clients, patients, and I'll tell you something, there's no turning back from here. So understand something. Dr. George Merkle, he was known as, the Einstein of food science. So today I have with me Joshua. He's our head alchemist, and he actually prepares all the life crystal products, the Humic and the Fulvic products. So he's the mad scientist in the lab now. So Joshua, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Darrell.
You look great. So let's get right at it. So why don't you tell me a little bit of history about Dr. George Merkle and how he came upon this discovery and where it led him. And just so you know, Dr. George Merkle isn't with us right now, but if you ever want to look at some of the videos that Dr. George Merkle did, you can go to YouTube and look at Vancouver lectures, okay? So Joshua, tell us a little bit about Dr. George Merkle.
Yes, well, George was born in Hungary, and as a teenager, he was going to junior college and another college at the same time, and then he was arrested and put in a concentration camp and forced to do science for other people, and George did the very first successful cold fusion experiment in 1967 for the Department of Energy and 30 executives. And actually, even what are called the Seven Sisters, the big oil companies, were there at the meeting as well. And after 3 years of battling it out with the oil companies, George decided that he wasn't going to change things there. And so then he went over with what he'd learned from the free energy was that we have in our own bodies, we also have our cells in our bodies can also receive that free energy, and it can, we use it for our energy cycle. But overall, that energy, once you raise your energy level, then your cells start to function totally differently.
Well, wasn't George, doesn't his product do the same as our mitochondria would do if they were totally healthy, creating ATP?
Well, the mitochondria, and in fact, all cellular material on the planet has ATP, GTP. It's the basic building blocks of life.
Right.
And so what George says that in 1929 that the FDA, they already knew what ATP was, and it was already approved. And George just kept saying, go look up in a biochemistry book ATP, GTP. And when you do everything that he's saying that it does that and more. And what George also said was that he was surprised that nobody had figured out a way of extracting the ATP.
Wow.
And so he put his mind over there, and his greatest discovery was discovering how to extract the free energy molecule out of substances that have a higher percentage. And so in clear Pyrex tubes in the desert, George, using solar distillation, fruit juices, tea, honey, coffee, the phosphates in the fruit juices are a big part of this. But in that process, George was able to create the sun with the phosphates was able to synthesize ATP, GTP. So the what he called the life crystals are not just ATP, but they're ATP, GTP, adenosine triphosphate, and guanosine triphosphate in the pentacarbon sugars, the 5 carbon sugars. So the basic building blocks of life for your cells. And so once George did that, the drink, he started experimenting with the drink, but then he did a more refined process with the drink and took it into the life crystals into an injectable. And with that concentration in vitro, just with the transfer RNA, George was able to regrow all the organs in the body.
I hope everybody just heard what Joshua just said. And this can be proven. So, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to prove it. But go ahead.
And he was, including brain cells. And then the latest research that I have come across on the ATP from published medical stuff is that the ATP is also the signaler. And so ATP, when they in gestation, when mommy is pregnant, as soon as they sense the release of ATP, the eye starts to form, then the ear. So ATP is directly involved in all the 5 senses, and so when you understand that part, and then you come over to what George was able to do in vitro, you really understand. When he created the energy for that it's there in the ATP. And
so ATP creates life.
Yes, and so then George, thought, well, if I'm able to do this in vitro in a petri dish, it should do the same if I put it in my body.
Yeah.
And he did. The life crystal, he started doing, he was doing the drink, but he was also doing the life crystal injectable, and he'd had 3 open heart surgeries. And his 4th one, he just found himself in the hospital, and the doc, when he woke up, he pulled everything out of him, and the doctor got into it. He had fired his doctor. And his doctor said, if you go home, you'll die on the way home. George didn't die on the way home. He kept on taking the life crystal, and it was documented that he regrew his heart. They opened him up because he'd also healed a cancer and killed it. But he couldn't detox all of the stuff from the tumor, so he had them open him up and clean out the tumor. Well, while they were opened him up, they checked his heart. They said, "George, you have rebuilt your heart." So the potential of the life crystals, as I've been going through George's research and what the life crystal and the potential of the life crystal injectable. If that was made available in the hospitals, we would never have to have another open heart surgery ever. Really, this is how profound this is. But the other part in here was that George kept saying the drink will do the same, and he called the drink the crude form of the life crystals.
Joshua, so if I can, everyone, I want you to understand something. When he said that it truly helps to regenerate the heart, it regenerates, it works on all the organ tissue and all the tissue in the body, but where it really targets the heart. Now, remember something about the heart, everyone. Heart disease is the main killer, of all diseases. Heart disease is a big issue, and the issue in the tissue is this, is that the heart gets damaged more than any other organ. And the reason why it gets damaged more than any other organ is because people have not learned how to master their emotions, and we always thought that everybody was going to fill up our little broken heart, our little empty heart. And that's not going to change anytime soon. I will tell you that my father had 3 open heart surgeries, and I can tell you that I won't need any open heart surgeries because I fill up my heart with love from myself so I can shine that onto the world. But see, the thing is that that's not going to happen. And remember something, thought form creates physical form, and this is why heart disease is the #1 killer, and it will remain that way, except I think in about 5 years, cancer will beat out heart disease, because there's so much mutation going on in our foods, the air, the water, and it has to mutate us. I mean, GMOs were made to actually genetically modified organisms were actually created, and chemicals were created to genetically modify our own tissues. So there's never been a better time to start taking ATP.
Well, and when you mention tissues, that's a very good place to start in what I've learned from George and gone into the regular medical to confirm it. But your primordial cells, okay, you have what they call primordial cells, and you have germinal cells, and the germinal cells are related to the tissue. Okay, so again, in the fetus, as soon as the fetus starts to form, okay, the skin, okay, there's 3 layers to the skin.
Yes.
The endoderm, the mesoderm, and the exoderm. The endoderm has to do with the skin, the actual skin. The mesoderm has to do with the bones, and the exoderm has to do with the organs. Now, each one of those tissues produces stem cells. Okay, and the stem cells are required for your immune system. Bone marrow production of your stem cells. Your stem cells go to your thymus and produce T cells and B lymphocytes, and if you don't have that happening, okay, you don't have an immune system. George said that the one shot of antibiotics, okay, kills the bone marrow production of stem cells. So if this
take that one to the bank.
Yeah, exactly. You understand how important your stem cells are for your immune system. And I just like to go back here a little bit in time. And I was involved in research quite a number of years ago with a group out of Denver that hired, a team of researchers, and they discovered that the Black Plague in England, okay, happened 2 years after they introduced white sugar. The understanding of this, that the white sugar can drop your B cell count in half for like up to 24 hours. So the other thing is that George says you're living in your body. You have 2 armies. You have an army of viruses, an army of bacteria, and then you have your immune cells. Your immune cells have to be strong to be able to keep the viruses and bacteria in check, and that's how we live. That's a part of life. Now, if you go and do something to reverse that, like a shot of antibiotics, okay, you just dropped your immune system down, and bingo, in comes those viruses and bacteria. So going back to England and the Black Plague, those people were living in filth and squalor. Their immune system was strong enough to handle it. But as soon as they did the sugar, boom, came the Black Plague, because they dropped they opened up their immune system, they dropped it down, and so that's what's happening with.
So guess what? They should have called it White Death, not Black Plague.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We got to rewrite history.
Right. In more ways than one, as I get into this, and I have to say that we are working on launching the George Merkle Institute to bring some of the brains in the world that would like to have a greater understanding of things, and to help bring this incredible. This should be being researched and taught in every university in the world, really. Once you get down to the understanding of what George had. Because the other thing that George did in vitro, okay, with the Life Crystal injectable, which is a very high energy source, he put his blood in vitro and he added the Life Crystals, and as he added the concentration, as it got stronger, he watched the mitochondria in our cells evolve up into what he called the Chondriana, which he said were our ancient ancestors. He did the same thing with lymphocytes, and added life crystals, and he watched them evolve up into what he called this chondriana. We're much larger. He says, these are the ancestors of our immune system. And if we raise our energy level, they actually come to life. They're there. They're not something that George brought in, because as he weakened the solution of the with the mitochondria, he watched the chondriana de-evolve back down into our mitochondria, and he watched the lymphocytes, the chondriana there, de-evolve back down into the lymphocytes.
Now,
So-
this should be so easy to understand, but it won't be for the majority because we stopped evolving.
Well, I partially agree with that, because for me, my brain hasn't really been over here, so I've had to learn a lot of the things that George had the syntax for that he'd already learned. But as I get into it, and as I get into other people's research, they should be gobbling this up if it's presented the right way, because
Okay, well, I know, but we have to take it back. The medical system's not going to gobble this up, and the government does not work for the private sector. They work for corporations.
yes, absolutely.
So that's why that's why we're going about this, and we're going to do this ourselves, because nothing ever happened great in your life unless you did it yourself. So if you're not going to take massive action for yourself and your family, nothing's going to happen. And that's why we're taking massive action to make sure that George Merkle's legacy does not die, and that it helps to come back and help with the evolving of humankind.
Well, and on that note, George, I had someone ask me the other day, did George leave a trail? And I said, he definitely left a trail. He wanted to be sure that this was carried on.
Yeah.
Okay, he really did. He's left the math, and then the other thing that George had that no one else in the world had was his microscope. His microscope, he modified it already a very sophisticated microscope, but what gave him the clarity and the extra magnification of being able to the photos that are available on this of what he's calling the chondriana and of all of our cells, it's on videos. And he was only able to do that because he created a cylinder to look through with billions of life crystals. The life crystals are light, but they allowed him to see the inner world and
every life crystal has its own shape.
Exactly. It's every life crystal is different.
It's unique, just like you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So from that the microscope, it was not only George was saying something, but you could look over and see what he was talking about. No one. I showed that video to a 93-year-old scientist, like 20 years ago. His name was Arthur Middleton Young, who invented the Bell helicopter, and he was considered America's leading new paradigm scientist. And when you watch George's video of the microbes and seeing all of that, after about an hour, he stood up and he walked over to the wall, and he stood against the wall, put his head against the wall, and he started banging his hands on the wall. It was too much for him. It was really, he had to go release it. But in his mind, what he saw on the video, for the science that he had been into, it was mind-blowing. And so really, this is mind-blowing. That's the reason I'm telling that, is it, the rest of the scientists should be doing the same once they really get into this, because George was able to follow evolution. And also what George discovered when we talk about, that we are light, well, George presented the science on that. Because 918 pairs of what he calls free energy scrolls floating in space and time. This was how he was able to do the first successful cold fusion experiment. Okay, was bringing those free energy scrolls into the experiment. But George discovered that 918 pairs of these free energy scrolls braid into a photon, light, matter into light, and then 918 photons braid into an electron, and 918 pairs of electrons braid into a neutron, and 918 neutrons braid into a proton. Okay, and in this one lecture, somebody at the end of it said, "George, how in God's name did you figure that out? He said, quite simple, really. He says, you take the mass of an electron. And if you put 918 of those electrons together, you have a neutron. And the same thing with the neutron. So really, he's discovered how light braids into matter. It's so profound that, and for the rest of the science.
Okay, I don't know if you just got this, everyone, but this is thought form, which is light form becoming physical form. This is the creation of life. And I guarantee you've never heard it anywhere but this show for the first time.
No.
All right? Because this is the stuff they don't want you to know. Because as soon as you embrace that you are a light energy being, then you're going to start seeing breadcrumbs and information everywhere to actually tell you where you came from and what you are, and then you can understand what your purpose is.
Well, when I read this and really understood this part that I just shared, I sat there and I felt things inside my own body and mind changing, just from that information. The consciousness in my body did something different with that information, and I think that as science gets a hold of this, it has to shift your consciousness. It did mine, and I'm not educated in the sciences that most of the world is educated in, but my own inner beingness adjusted for that information. I felt it, and the other thing that George said was, when you understand the significance of the life crystals, the life crystals that George was doing, the more that he did, the more he started to understand what he was doing. So it literally woke his brain up to this.
I think that's like almost everything. The more that you do it, the more you understand it. And you don't want to hope you know. You want to know you know. And you don't know that until you really work on it.
Well, if you start taking the life crystals, the regrowth in the brain, it grows new brain cells.
Well, I'll tell you, in the last 3 days, we did 35 hours of shooting. I won't say 35 hours of video, but I bet you we did at least 18 hours of video, because we've put together the International Training Institute of Health docu-series to show what the medical system thinks about all physical ailments in the human body, and what we think about it, and what they would do, and what we would do. And we just shot that docu-series. It'll be up in the Doc of Detox library for you to take a look at and watch these videos. And you can actually go from A to Z to what your condition is, and we go through every condition. But I just wanted to say that I was taking probably about an ounce of ATP, and I was doing it probably every 2 or 3 hours. Now, the first day I was here, I didn't do it. But the last 2 days I was here, it made all the difference in the world. Because when you're under all these lights, all this Wi-Fi, all these cameras, all this electricity, everything is about vibration.
Well, it's more than that, Darrell. Okay, the ATP, the other information that has come out recently is that ATP is the signaler. So it sends the signals to all the other cells. And so it's the high intelligence of communication. Yes. But it tells the cells if there's an invader. Okay, it warns all the other cells. So the electro pollution has been affecting the ATP signaling, and in some cases right down to pain, where people have the neurological pain that what they call neurological pain when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, it's in your head, we can't find anything. Okay, but it's in the ATP signaling. Okay, the ATP is the main signaler for your pain. You go and stub your foot, and it sends extreme pain, or you burn your hand, it sends extreme pain in the beginning so that you don't hurt yourself any further. But then after that, it backs down. Well, in some cases, because of the electro pollution, that pain continues to increase. So where even the owie has gone away, the person is in extreme pain that's unexplainable.
Yeah, it doesn't allow the switch to turn off.
Exactly. Exactly. And so the electropollution is creating that, and depending, and because the electropollution is cumulative in your body, if you have a lot of exposure, okay, then it can you bring the symptoms, become much more severe, and if you start to get away from all the electropollution and detox from it, lots of the symptoms that you have that you don't know are coming from this will disappear. Now, the ATP that we have, the Life Crystal drink, the elixirs, they do help to reset this. We had a lady actually out in the next province in Alberta that had a hernia operation, and they did some damage, and again, it should have, after the damage, it should have gone, subsided a bit, but it got worse and worse and worse, to the point where she considered, she told me, euthanasia. She couldn't live with the pain that she had.
Well, that's an epidemic.
And then one day, I'd given her husband a couple of years ago some ATP Plus she only had a small bottle, and it was in the fridge. She was native. She was not into taking that. And then one day she opened the fridge, and Spirit said to her, "Take the ATP." So she started taking it, and I said, well, her name is Hilda. I said, Hilda, how long did it take? She said, well, I noticed the second morning that I had no pain. She said, but Joshua, I tried CBDs for a year. It helped with the pain, but it didn't get rid of it. Everybody could still tell by the look on my face. I could tell my children's look when they come into the bedroom in the morning, and with the look on their face by how much pain I was in. She said, well, after I took the ATP, it's gone away. It's healed it. It didn't just, she has to, she doesn't even have to keep taking the ATP. It healed it. So if you have a physical injury, and it's not an accumulation of the EMF, which I believe the whole Lyme's epidemic is associated with this, that people are getting certain symptoms because of the electropollution. And they proved this in Switzerland, actually, research. And they have termed something called electrohypersensitivity and multiple chemical sensitivity, and they mask each other. Okay, so if you have heavy electropollution, you can have the same symptoms as somebody who's overloaded on heavy metals, working in a very toxic environment and living toxic. You can have those exact same symptoms just from your smartphone and all the it's an accumulation. And I've also read people's testimonies on the internet in the last year, people saying, wow, you got to leave your smartphone at work and go home, and you'll see how much your smartphone is doing to you. And so, there are things that help with this, but if you're overloaded on the EMF and you can't explain your symptoms any other way, you gotta get out of that, or you gotta buy something that negates it. Okay, we have here a little device that helps to negate the EMF, because we're all doing a lot of EMF exposure, and so these things can help. But the understanding of this is what's important, because if you want to find your way back to your health, you have to know the things that are affecting it. And sometimes until you get out of the forest, you don't see the trees. So this is just a little, a little heads up on the electropollution as well, because it has a big effect and a big factor on our overall health, all of us, and we can't, we're all dealing with it. It's just
how are you going to offset it? That is the thing. How are you going to actually repair the damage that you don't know that's happening due to an invisible predator?
Yes, and that's the whole.
And that's why Joshua he developed the Divine Vine and the ATP and the pineal. The pineal really helps with the pineal gland in the brain, the Divine Vine for the thyroid, and and also the ATP is the strongest of ATP, but all three of them have it.
Well, and you know, I put frequencies in for those the Life Crystal drink to do specific things.
Yes.
But the other thing that I've learned, like with the lady who did the ATP and got rid of the nerve damage, okay, I you know, what I put in there for frequencies was mainly for extreme energy. Okay, I would have thought more, oh, she should have used the pineal, but that wasn't the case. So getting the Life Crystals into you with the fulvic, okay, because each one of our elixirs has the same amount of Life Crystals and fulvic acid. And the combination also of that, when George said that this was the crude drink, but people could still get the same results, it just took longer. Well, when we added the fulvic acid to the Life Crystals, it definitely made the assimilation. It increased the assimilation, which increased the effectiveness,
How?
which brought it.
How did it do that?
Well, the fulvic acid is known as the miracle molecule. It will carry up to 60 elements and minerals directly into the cell. And so in the case of the Life Crystal molecule is very large, and so it carries that in directly into the cell. And then this is a double effect that both the Life Crystals detox the veins. Well, so does the fulvic acid. The fulvic acid, once it brings the nutrients into the cell, will attract to itself 3 times its own weight in heavy metals or radioisotopes, and it will alter the ionic form so you can safely detox it. And
without reaction. That's what we want.
yes, without reaction, because it's changed. The toxin is no longer that toxin.
It's no longer trying to like lasso the toxin and then drag it out of your body. It goes in, shuts it down, and it puts a muzzle on it. And then it brings it out.
Well, it's in some cases, but they've also discovered that your body can turn those elements into good guys. They can take the bad guys that are being altered by the fulvic, and they can use those they can convert those and use those as good guys.
What bad guys?
Whatever toxins that you're
So you're saying that can actually, it'll convert toxins into.
Well, it changes
the frequency.
It changes the ionic form.
That's right.
Okay, and in that your body can take that, depending on the combination of toxins that you have that have been altered. It can take those and because they've changed them into other forms, those other forms can come together as something good and be used up by the body.
Beautiful.
Okay, and so that's. That I from other doctors' work is where I learned that. They are saying that the fulvic acid can actually, it's alchemy, because it's changing elements. But then that's what we're talking about here with the Life Crystals. It seems like alchemy until you understand the science, and that's the whole thing. As I got into this, I was like, huh, I'm uneducated. We're all uneducated. So I am getting an education here at 68 years old, and I can't get enough of it, because it's understanding how my body functions that I had no idea.
So that's it. You got to find your passion and get overexcited and hold that, because that in itself is making ATP. All right.
Now, I'd just like to touch in a little bit further on George's discovery of the Chondriana, okay, which are the ancestors of our immune cells. That is really the end of all disease. When that can be utilized in the hospitals, and George was working with clinics all around the world. He had a group in France was working with they were going to take his products and do clinical tests with it. Then he he worked with a company called Elcan, I think it was.
Elcan,
and
They're big.
They were going to do tests in 10 different hospitals. It was going to cost $30 million, okay? But they were, the results that they were already seeing. He had clinics all around the world using the life crystals in clinical situations. And in some situations, they were taking the person's blood, putting it into a solution with the life crystals and Chondriana, and it would alter the blood, and then they would put it back in the body, and the Chondriana would come to life. And they also discovered that if they put the life crystal injectable directly into people, intravenous, that in some people's cases it brought the Chondriana back to life right in their body. So the understanding in here that these are our ancient ancestors, and that they can be brought back to life by increasing our energy level. Really, it's all
Everything
about
is energy. Everything is energy.
And light. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you understand how light braids into matter, you can readjust some brain cells there too.
Yeah.
But the Chondriana are between the Chondriana and the life crystals and the humic and the fulvic acid. I mean, really, we could live to be, like George says, 150 to 200 years. If you nurture the body will live to a certain age. But if you nurture the genes and feed the genes, which is the life crystals are really the primordial soup. They are made up of the basic building blocks of life. So we have the ability to rebuild and regrow ourselves and to raise our frequencies so that we can stop the death process in ourselves. Because from all the pollution that we deal with, the septums in our cells are half blocked. And the mitochondria are probably only working at 30-40% in some people's cases. And if you've got chronic fatigue, it's not working. It's basically not working at all, and you're on the couch. But again,
there was a study that said that your mitochondria will spin 1,500 times per second, but that the majority of the population is only spinning 300 to 500 times per second. So that's why we see all illness. This was a study, and they said this is where the basis of all illness is, because a 75 kilogram man needs to produce 85 kilograms of ATP a day. And now that you understand that it's the master signaler of everything, that's why we need it.
Yeah. And on that note, what goes into your body, okay? If you're eating meat, okay, you have to use a lot of your own ATP to process that meat, because there is no ATP in meat, okay? But in vegetables, it's full of ATP. So if you're eating foods that have ATP in them, your body works much better to be able to raise your frequencies, to be able to bring your own immune system up.
Well, yeah, it comes back to something as simple as this. Please chew your food when you eat it. I mean, everything seems to be logical, doesn't it, when we really want to bring it down to basics.
Yeah, that's a part of it. Then the other part is that our food is missing the fulvic and the humic, so we don't have that as.
And Darrell, did you get that? The food is missing the fulvic and the humic. It's supposed to have the fulvic and the humic in it. So if we had the fulvic and the humic in it, and you were doing things that had more ATP, what would you have?
Well, you would have much better health and longevity. It really comes down to understanding. We're all very ignorant, and thank you for doing these teachings, Darrell. They're so important for everyone, because there's so many areas to cover. When you start to wake up to this, it's like, how come they didn't teach me this in school? Because they didn't know. Guess what? They didn't teach the teachers or the doctors.
Life gets better when you're around people that are awake.
Yes, and
life gets better.
And the understanding that life crystals are
Yeah.
are liquid light,
Yes.
and so what George called the breath of life, and as you do the life crystals, okay, it brings more light into your body, and it's going to raise your consciousness. And as you raise your consciousness, your brain is going to take in other things, and your because your brain is it needs brain food.
Absolutely.
It needs brain food. So when you provide the life crystals in a form that is assimilable into the body and into the cell, the brain starts to respond with regrowing new brain cells. Number one, if people are start doing the life crystals, it will regrow or grow new brain cells, and as that happens, it opens you up to greater understandings because you have greater function of your brain. So as George was saying, that the more of the life crystals that he did, the easier it was for him to figure all of this out, because it repaired his brain. And from what I understand reading his stuff, it didn't seem to need a lot of repair, because first of all, he was born outside of this country in Hungary. But at a very young age, they kidnapped him, basically, and George goes into kind of in depth a little bit on how important it is to have freedom of your mind and thoughts, because he didn't have that. When they put him in a concentration camp for 6.5 years. He was put into a box 6 by 6, okay, with no light, no anything. And so George says, "What do you do with a brain like this when you do that?" So he has a book in there called Life in a Coma or something, and really he went out of his body, and what he saw in the universe, and what even some of his artwork, he drew a lot of the things that he saw later underneath the microscope with the life crystals. He already drew, he already saw it in this visionary experience. Mm-hmm. So after they did that to him, he had a greater appreciation for freedom and freedom of the mind. He says, if you don't have freedom of the mind,
that's the only freedom.
Then the body suffers.
That's right, because freedom of the mind helps to feed the spirit. There it is. Everybody, just so you know, I'll mention it again at the end, but so we're going to be, a week from today, we're going to be doing a Q&A, and that Q&A is going to be at 3 p.m., okay? So that's 3 p.m. a week from today. So get all your questions, whether they're challenging or whether about health or whether about science, whether about the mind, whether about the ATP or about George Merkle. Get all your questions together. 1 week from today, 3 p.m., we're going live, and we'll take your questions live, and you'll be able to put them on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, and we'll be taking those questions and answering them with Joshua, and I'll do my best too. And we'll actually answer them for you live. And we'll also be taking your questions if you put them into our Facebook or Instagram, or you send them into us through intercom on our website, right? So, and everybody, also I want you to know that in the Doc of Detox library, we have what's called the Humic Fulvic Guide, which has all the science. Joshua has dug out science from PubMed and everywhere else, third-party studies, to show you how powerful humic fulvic is, okay? And also we have in there, we have actual articles and we have writings by Dr. George Merkle. So you're going to be able to see his writings. We're going to and see the pictures of the mitochondria, the ATP, the crystals, and everything. That's all going to be in there for you to go through, because you're not going to find it anywhere else, because it was buried. And so let's see what we can do to revive the ATP in our lives,
and the understanding. Even George wasn't what he was dealing with. Okay, they didn't have the humic and the fulvic acid available at that point. He knew about fulvic, but there wasn't a real supply of it available. And so one of the problems that they were having is with the hospitals and the clinics around the world, okay, they were growing the Chondriana and injecting it into people's bodies in cultures. And the problem was that some most people are so toxic, okay, that the reaction that they would have to the Chondriana would be so extreme that they had to be very careful because of the toxicity. If people have cancer, okay, then they're very toxic. And so, but what wasn't available to George at the time was like the humic and the fulvic acid that we have, because before people, if it was available then, before they came to do the Chondriana, they could have done the humic and the fulvic, done a certain amount of detox. Then when they did the Chondriana, it wouldn't have been as severe in reactions. And so, really the Chondriana is so intelligent, it's super intelligent, that when they would put it into somebody's body, okay, or activate it in somebody's body, it would go, if they had cancer, it would go right to the roots of the cancer and eat the roots out and kill the cancer first. Super intelligent, okay, but it is us. It is that innate intelligence that's already within us that's fallen asleep. And so, you know, it's when you raise the energy level, then all of this starts to come back. And if you can, you know, raise it to a certain point, then you produce your own Chondriana. And they'll come in and clean up your whole body. And in a hospital situation, we could do this with all disease. And the amazing thing about the Chondriana, because they come from you, is that after they've done their job, then they go and they hide in the lymph until they're required again. It's not like, you know, they are you. That was the big thing that George proved with the, you know, and this is on camera. You know, watching the Chondriana de-evolve down into our lymphocytes and our mitochondria. This is evolution. This is when you go beyond theory and you can actually look at it, you know, then you know you're at a different level. And so science needs to catch up. And so we're here to give science and the medical a little poke in the bum. Hey guys, you don't have to do this, and you know, really there's another solution. If you don't know there's other solutions, then you know, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So let's do something different.
Yeah.
Really, I am.
Let's turn on the light.
I am fired up to get this into hospitals, to get this available to the people, because it's available. We can make more life crystals. We have the technology. We are setting up at this point to a new life crystal factory to be able to make new life crystals and to carry on this research. The secret in here is the life crystals. With the life crystals, you can raise the energy level in the body to produce your own Chondriana to clean up all the yeasts and everything in your body, because we've all been poisoned, and so this is where we're going. This is where we're going. But to start with, like George said, the life crystal drink does the same. It's just slower. So get on the elixirs, the life crystal, experience it for yourself, and then call us back on one of the talk shows and share your experience with everybody else, so that you know that they can have that benefit.
Yes, and just know this, that like I said, a week from today at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Doc Talk Q&A, we'll be doing one in the afternoon with Joshua. And get your questions ready. And we're probably going to be doing one with Joshua about once a month, once every 6 weeks, because we've had so many requests because of the power behind the humic, the fulvic, and the crystals. And do your homework. Go to the Doc of Detox library and go into the Humic Fulvic guide and take a look at the science that's in there. And then take a look at Dr. George Merkle's, some of his papers. Take a look at the pictures he took of the life crystals underneath the microscope. We have all that there available for you. And then come to us in a week from now and bring your questions and let people know that, that they can turn on the light. They can turn on the ATP. They can turn on their mitochondria. They can create the life that they were told they could have.
Yes. And when they're in there looking at that humic and fulvic, at the very beginning of it is a section on ATP from PubMed, and study that, because that's phenomenal when you understand the importance of ATP in your body. It's involved in every bodily function.
Yes, and in there too, you'll be able to go into the Humic Fulvic guide, and you can click on to our Humic Fulvic talk show that we did, where we went through the Humic Fulvic and we explained why humic and fulvic is ancient minerals, and that actually help to go in and deliver the nutrition and help to deliver the toxins out.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Joshua, again, it's been enlightening, and I'm sure it's been enlightening for you, and I do mean enlightening. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on the show, and if you like this show, check out the docofdetoxshow.com, and you can go to the schedule, and we've got so much scheduled for you, so much learning for you. And just know that our shows are all up on YouTube as well. We've got lots of testimonials there. We've got testimonials on people who have come to our clinic for personal treatment and training, for certifications, and everything else. And we have our Q&As on every Monday and Friday, our regular Q&As when I'm not traveling and teaching. So check us out, and just know that this is your show. Send us in your suggestions, and know that we'll have Joshua on a week from now for all your questions, okay? And I just want you to have the best day of your life, every day of your life. Joshua, would you like to say to our beautiful guests?
Well, thank you very much, Darrell, first of all, for being able to present this. I feel like ringing a bell for humanity. What I'm looking at in George's stuff, I'm not even sure that I'm able to communicate the importance of his discoveries and the importance of that being carried on. It was really, George should have received a Nobel Peace Prize and he should still, even though it's been kind of downgraded by some of the people they've given Nobel Peace Prizes to recently, but still. George should have that acknowledgement, because really what he's given to humanity it's hard to put it into words, but the understanding of creation is in here, and the understanding of the function of our own bodies and how all life functions,
and understanding that the spark of life lies in the ATP.
Yes, and the ATP GTP, because that's the whole thing. It's not just ATP. The life crystals are ATP GTP in the 5 carbon sugars, the basic building blocks of life. And the GTP, the ATP actually is a tetrahedral pyramid, and on a cross section view of it, you can see a vortex going right up the center. And the GTP, actually works. Its main job is to help convert ADP, which is what happens when you lose a molecule off of the ATP and it gets spent. You used up your energy. The GTP helps turn the ADP back into ATP. So they work together. They're both energy generators. And that's what this is all about, is energy, and
free energy,
yes, and your energy, your free energy, and everybody has that free energy, and being able to access that energy is what we're talking about, being able to access more of it. The fact that the life crystals can put your mitochondria into superlattice, which is the cells line up instead of being all helter-skelter, and then that brings in superconductivity. And when that happens, your energy level, that's the superconductivity is where the free energy experiment comes in. But we are superconductive as well, and as we get our bodies to that point of raising our energy levels, then we move up into the higher consciousness and a greater understanding of all of this and of ourselves and humanity. So thank you very much, and I have a little saying: onward and upward.
And remember that it's going to take personal action. Okay? And remember this, that it's teamwork that makes the healing work. All right? Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Joshua, for all your research and all your brilliant formulas. And thank you, George, wherever you may be right now. Okay? And thank you for joining us. And remember, everyone, okay? 3, 2, 1, you got this. Let's make it happen. God bless.
Thank you.
If you're looking for life-saving and life-changing information, well, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to click and subscribe. Stay connected.